Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video on the channel, guys. So what I have for you guys today is another episode of the Championship Roundup. So this is now episode 23, guys, of the Championship Roundup. So if you've not seen this series before, let me briefly explain how it all goes down. So basically, guys, every week I give you my analysis basically of what I thought of each game going on in the Championship. But what I'm really interested to know is what you guys had to say about this weekend's results, really. And we have quite a few talking points to actually go over in today's video today, guys. You know, we had some big games going on at the top of the table and the bottom of the table as well. We also have quite a few controversial decisions to also talk about, which I think raised a couple of talking points in this one. So, but just before we get into any of my analysis, guys, for this week's fixtures, I will include your comments on screen now. So if any of you guys did successfully manage to predict any of the fixtures that were going on this weekend, I will include your comment on screen now. So fair play to everyone who did get a correction predict. I think this week I managed to get one score prediction right. That was the Bristol City against Rotherham match. In that one, that finished 1-0 to Bristol City, which was what I predicted in the end. So 1 out of 12, it's not too bad for me. It's certainly not my best week, but lately my predictions haven't really been the best. So fair play to anyone who did get a prediction right, because there was a couple of upsets in this one, definitely. So the first game we had to talk about, guys, was the one taking place between Wigan Athletic and Sheffield Wednesday. So this was the one taking place on Friday night at the DW Stadium, and was a bit of an odd occurrence, really. It was two teams coming up against each other who, in contrasting parts of the table, but really in this match, there wasn't a lot to separate them. And I've got to say, I didn't think there was all too much quality on show in this game either. It definitely wasn't the game of the weekend in terms of performance to go ahead and watch. So Sheffield Wednesday managed to go in at half-time with a 1-0 lead, thanks to a goal from Ross Wallace. There was a bit of fortune to his goal, you know, it sort of took a little deflection, ended up looping past the keeper into the top corner. But I did think that this was pretty much a massive result, really, for Sheffield Wednesday, as this result actually took them into the top 6 now of the Championship, which is, of course, where they're going to want to be at the end of the season. It's been a really funny one, and I still can't call who I think is going to go down. So I'd love to know from you guys in the comments down below do you think Wigan are going to be facing relegation this year? Let me know down below. And then for our next fixture, guys, we have my club Preston North End, who came up against Barnsley away from home. And once again, I've got to say, this definitely wasn't the game of the weekend. A 0-0 draw was played out at Oakwell, and really it was quite similar, really, to the Wigan against Sheffield Wednesday game, in my opinion. There was not really a lot of quality going on show in this one. I mean, Preston lined up for this game with a 4-4-2 formation, with Simon Mackinock playing up front with Jordan Hugel. And when Preston set up like that, you know, it sort of epitomises us being quite hard to beat, really, in that aspect. You know, we've got two target men up front there in Hugel and Mackinock, and going forward, those two didn't really seem to click, and we couldn't really cause Barnsley too many problems going forward. And the same result really was for Barnsley. They didn't really cause Preston too many issues going forward. They had quite a few half chances, but nothing really clear cut where they definitely should have got a goal in this one. And in the end, the 0-0 draw, it probably was the fair result in the end. Neither side could do just enough to go ahead and win the game, and like I said, the 0-0 draw probably justified it. Then for our next game, guys, we have Birmingham, who came up against Fulham. And first of all, we just got to appreciate that Birmingham have finally got a victory under Gianfranco Zola. It's only taken him like 10 attempts to get a victory, but finally he's managed to come out with something, thanks to a 1-0 victory to Birmingham over Fulham, thanks to a Jukovic goal in the 75th minute. And what a result this could turn out to be for Birmingham for the rest of the season, really, because you just felt like the longer this awful run of form went on for Birmingham, just the further down the table they keep falling. You know, they were never in threat of relegation or anything like that, but I do get the impression with this Birmingham side now, I think that the playoffs really are a tad too far for them now. It would take an absolute miracle for them to get that. But I think what's important now for this Birmingham side, like I said, is for them to be focusing on building this squad for next season, in my opinion, because they've got a group of players there who I think, with a couple more additions, which I think, you know, Zola will be backed in the summer to bring in some of his own additions, they could have a really serious stab at getting out of the Championship. But when we'd associate Fulham with normally would be, you know, flair attacking football with quite a few goals being scored. That just wasn't on show in this match. You know, every team has their off day, so I suppose this was what Fulham's were in today's game, guys. But they also weren't helped by a Fredericks red card after the 68th minute, and this game, you know, looked to be going towards the draw, that sort of result, but that red card sort of tipped it in Birmingham's favour, and of course they were able to take full advantage. So finally they've got a victory. Then for our next game, guys, we have Blackburn Rovers, who came up against Queen's Park Rangers, where there were definitely some talking points we need to go over in this game, guys. So Blackburn managed to grab the 1-0 victory thanks to a late minute winner from Sam Gallagher in the, I think it was 91st minute or something like that. So a very late dramatic winner from Sam Gallagher. The big talking points from this game, guys, was a disallowed goal, which I think it was Connor Washington who had the shot. The ball did look to go over the line, you know, from all the replays I've seen of it. It's still quite inconclusive from everything I've seen, you know. If any of you guys have seen some concrete evidence that the ball definitely went over the line, I'd like to hear it from you guys. But from what I've seen, the ball did roll over the line when Connor Washington had that shot, and you know, QPR should have had a goal for that. So definitely a controversial decision for that one, and a bit of an injustice really that QPR, I suppose, haven't got anything from this game because of a decision like that. So I'm sure a lot of QPR fans will be frustrated with this one, but in terms of a result for Blackburn, this was massive, you know, definitely a needed result. I mean, with other sides around the bottom of the table winning this week, like Burton, Albion and Bristol City, for Blackburn to get this victory, to keep them within touching distance of those sides, was massive for them. And then speaking of Bristol City, guys, they were the next team that we have to talk about, guys. So in the end, Bristol City have finally put an end to this just horrific run of form they've gone under recently with a 1-0 victory over Rotherham United. And what a massive result this could be in terms of the rest of the season for Bristol City. I mean, I said it in my championship predictions video. I said that this could be a result which defines the rest of the season for Bristol City, because I genuinely thought that if Rotherham were going to win this game against Bristol City, I'll probably be putting them in the bottom 3 for my prediction video, which I've got coming up quite soon, guys. But since they did manage to get this victory, surely now that'll be able to catapult them and give this side a bit more confidence. You know, that losing streak now they've got that monkey off their back in that aspect, I suppose. And with this victory now, surely they can only look to build on that and, you know, prove on it from there. But Rotherham got a bit unlucky in this match. You know, the first half was a bit, once again, we had quite a few games this week which were quite lacking in that final cutting edge and that bit of flair. This was probably one of those matches as well, but I think it was Lee Johnson who made changes at half time which sort of changed the dynamic of the game. It was a substitute who scored for Bristol City as well. I think it was Juric who managed to get his first goal since signing for Bristol City, and like I said, surely now this will just boost Bristol City's confidence, and this could be a massive result for them. And Rotherham just unlucky again, they just can't seem to buy a win. Then for our next game, guys, we had pretty much another upset going on. We had Burton Albion who came up against Wolverhampton Wanderers. So for this game, it looked like Wolves were going to be going on to win the match. You know, once again, I was predicting an away victory for this game, with Wolves being the favourites going into this tie, and the first half sort of justified that with my thought process. You know, Wolves walked in with a 1-0 lead thanks to a held at Costa penalty, but in the second half, Burton Albion just seemed to change the dynamic of this game, really. You know, it has been so far this season Burton Albion's home form which has been their standout attribute, really, as to, you know, what's offering them any hope of survival. You know, I do see something in this Burton Albion side which I think is something that a lot of teams which have been relegated over the past couple of seasons haven't really had, and that's a spirit and determination. You know, when I think of sides which have previously got relegated, like let's say last season, for example, we had like Charlton who went down that season, Bolton as well. In those two sides, I didn't really see a fight and determination and spirit from everywhere in the club. You know, everything from Burton Albion, like their manager, their players, it all seems to come from that and that fighting spirit to actually stay up. So Burton Albion have definitely got a chance for the rest of the season. Then for our next game, guys, we had another 1-0 victory, guys. This time it was to the away side, and it was Norwich City who managed to walk away with a 1-0 victory over Cardiff City. And once again, Norwich City just seemed to be a side which has turned around their fortunes when their season looked to be going in one direction when they were on an awful run of form. But recently, you know, their last 3 results have been incredibly positive for them, and another victory. This time it was thanks to a Cameron Jerome header who managed to nod in the only goal from this game. Once again, it was probably one of those games which was a little bit lacking in that final quality from either team, really. It wasn't one of the standout performances from either of these sides, but I've got to say, Cardiff I did think were a tad unfortunate in this game. I know they had 2 penalty appeals which were waved away, which I saw a lot of people were incredibly frustrated about, and, you know, understandably so, you know. But I'm not going to take anything away from Norwich for getting the victory, because going to a place like Cardiff, you know, my club Preston North End went there not too long ago on a Tuesday night, and they are a side which makes it very difficult for you to, you know, play your natural game, I suppose. And it was a set piece which won it in the end for Norwich, but they'll take that, you know, and this only leaves Norwich now not far away from the playoffs indeed. Then for our next game, guys, we had Ipswich Town, who came up against Reading, and in the end this one managed to finish as level as a 2-2 draw in the end. And once again for Ipswich Town, where on earth would they be this season without their main man Tom Lawrence, who is of course on loan from Leicester City. What a performance he had once again. He just seems to be their starlight, and whenever they need something like that ounce of creativity, a driving factor to take them forward, or a goal, Tom Lawrence is their man. And once again he managed to bag 2 goals in this game, and I've got to say his first goal he scored in this game was an absolute peach of a goal. He ran past like the whole Reading team, then fired it into the back of the net. A fantastic finish from him, and once again just a stand-up performance from him once again. But Reading, I feel like, will be a tad disappointed to only pick up a draw. I mean, going away to Ipswich, it's not an easy place to go to, but I feel like these are the sort of games which Reading will have been targeting as a victory. As of course we all know how competitive the Championship is, especially at the top of the table. You know, it's results like this which mean Brighton and Newcastle can extend their lead on 3rd place, which is currently Reading at this point in time. But Reading did manage to get 2 goals for themselves. I'm not going to take that away from them. And Obita as well, it's got a decent goal as well. I'd love to know from you guys, whose goal do you think was better? Do you think it was Tom Lawrence's first goal or Obita's? They were quite different styles of goals. Obita's was like a driven shot into the bottom corner. Tom Lawrence was a bit more of a dribbling around and firing into the back of the net. But in the end this one managed to finish as a level draw. I think a bit of frustration from both sides really. Then for our next game, guys, we had Newcastle United, who came up against Derby County, and in the end this one managed to finish as a 1-0 victory for Newcastle. And what a victory this could be for Newcastle in the end. It takes them back to the top of the Championship now, and of course with Brighton dropping points this weekend, this was just a very good weekend for Newcastle in the end really, you know. Coming up against a side like Derby, it was never going to be an easy task for them, especially coming off the back of that draw they had recently to QPR. Quite a bit of frustration going around Newcastle at this point in time, with of course a January transfer window which was a little bit, you know, it was underwhelming, you know, from their point of view. But it was Matt Ritchie who grabbed the only goal of today's game, guys, and in the first half, you know, Newcastle looked to be quite comfortable in control. You know, they were carving out more chances than this Derby side were, but in the second half Derby looked to change the tempo of the game a little bit and did, you know, have a bit of a go at Newcastle, but they just couldn't find that. Once again, I've said it time and time again throughout this video, they just didn't have that final quality at the end to go and get anything from this match, so a little bit frustrating from them. But I'm sure Newcastle fans would have loved this victory over Steve McLaren, of course him being former manager of Newcastle. They definitely don't have the fondest of thoughts for Steve McLaren, so I'm sure this victory for Newcastle will have meant quite a bit really. Then for our next game, guys, we had Nottingham Forest, who came up against Aston Villa. So for this one, Nottingham Forest managed to grab a fantastic 2-1 victory over Aston Villa. So of course recently Nottingham Forest have lost one of their best players in Henry Lansbury to Aston Villa, so this was always going to be an interesting matchup to see who would come out on top in the end of it. But it was Nottingham Forest, and once again frustration goes around Aston Villa. I mean, where would they be this season? I mean, we saw from this game really how much they missed Jonathan Codger. I mean, he was back in this game, back with a bang. He managed to grab the first goal of this game, put Aston Villa 1-0 in front, but in the end that just wasn't enough. And I've seen quite a lot of negativity from Aston Villa fans towards Sam Johnson, who is currently on loan from Manchester United, of course the goalkeeper who you currently have. He fumbled the shot at the first goal for Assombalonga to follow in the rebound. Very frustrated, but Nottingham Forest managed to grab the winner thanks to a 17-year-old. What a moment it was from him. Aston Villa also had Grealish sent off. It wasn't great from Aston Villa. Into the Sunday games, guys. First of all, we had a massive derby taking place at the top of the table, guys. We had Huddersfield Town, who were coming up against Leeds United, and what a game. This just had really everything going on in it, you know. This was that classic derby, you know. We had tackles flying in, we had a lot of passion being shown from both sides, and these are the sort of games which, I mean, if these two sides were to meet in the playoffs, whether it be in the semi-final or in the final, what a matchup that would be, because these are two sides which really there isn't a lot between them in my opinion. And on the day, of course, Huddersfield managed to come out on top, and possibly the biggest talking point from this game was Huddersfield managed to grab that late winner, of course. David Wagner, the Huddersfield manager, just couldn't contain himself. He went over to all the players, jumped on them, huddled around them. let me know what you think of this one in the comments down below, guys. Do you think it was just, you know, David Wagner showing his passion, or do you think that it was a bit disrespectful from him towards, you know, people at Leeds United? Because on his way back to going back to his dugout, Gary Monk bumped into him, and then that just caused a mass brawl between the managers, between the players, between the staff, and everything was kicking off. In the end, the two managers were both forced, they were both sent off to the stands, and I think 3 or 4 players were also booked for pushing and shoving and everything like that. So you could see that tensions were definitely running high in this game, and to be fair, it did look to be going towards a draw. You know, at the end of the first half it was 1-1. Towards the end of the match, both sides had chances to go on and win it, but it was just Huddersfield in the end who showed that clinical nature, and what a result this could be for Huddersfield at the end of it. And then for our last match, guys, we had a cracker of a match go on in the Championship, guys. We had Brentford who came up against Brighton, and in the end this one managed to finish as a 3-3 draw. What a game this was. This had loads of drama going on in it, to be completely honest, and honestly I don't know which set of fans will be happier going in at the end of it, really, because I feel like Brentford should have won this match, but I feel like going into this match Brighton would have been targeting this match as a victory. So I feel like there'll be frustrations with both sets of fans, really. I mean, Brentford managed to have a very impressive first half where they managed to garner a 2-0 lead. In the second half, Brighton showed pretty much a big improvement. They managed to pull it back to 2-2, so the game looked to be ending as a draw, but then Brentford managed to grab a 3-2 lead in the 94th minute, and then in the 97th minute it was Tom Ahmed who popped up for Brighton to make it 3-3. So of course quite a few questions have been asked recently of this Brighton side, with a lot of people saying, you know, they're going to bottle it now with a couple of dodgy results they've had recently, but whenever Brighton have come off the back of the loss, they always seem to bounce back with the performance, and I feel like if this game was to end 3-2 to Brentford, I feel like quite a few questions would have been asked of this Brighton side then, and perhaps the pressure might have got to them to actually crumble, but they showed their resilience in this game. They showed their character to keep on going, even when they were 2-0 down, and then when they were 3-2 down with only minutes left of the game. They showed they could come back into this game, and to be honest, they showed why they are second in the Championship, so fair play to Brighton for getting back into it. So guys, I will now wrap it up for this episode of the Championship Roundup, guys. So in terms of my result of the weekend, it's quite... there's 2 results really which I could give it to. I could give it to the Bristol City against Rotherham result, just for them ending that awful run of form. I could give it to the Birmingham result as well, for them ending that run of form, but I'm going to give the result of the weekend to Huddersfield Town. I just feel like getting that result over Leeds United, to be these two sides battling it out near the top of the table, to be a local derby as well, for Huddersfield to get the victory, I just feel like that's the best result of the weekend. And then for my goal of the weekend, I'm going to give it to Tom Lawrence once again. I believe I gave it to Tom Lawrence last week as well, but the first goal he scored against Reading was an absolute cracker of a goal. If you've not seen it, make sure you go check it out. But yeah, he's going to get my goal of the weekend, so let me know in the comments down below, guys, who got your result and goal of the weekend. I'd be very interested to know. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for this episode of the Championship Roundup, guys. So if you have enjoyed, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. As well as that, thank you so much for all your guys' support on all my videos recently. It has been absolutely insane, guys. So like I said, I just can't say thank you enough for all of that. But make sure you leave a comment in the comments down below as well as to how your team performed this weekend. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.